Bonsoir.
Good evening. So, we've entered the Anthropocene. We are Anthropocene. We are the earthly community. We are living together the climate change, the acidification of the ocean, rising sea levels, the extinction of species, pandemics, famines, soil pollution, fires are spreading, migrations are happening, we are experiencing floods, droughts, generalized urbanization, social inequalities. The list is infinite. We are no longer able to control our impacts. Everything around us is shifting, and whether we like it or not, we are newly exploring our own lives and our environments. From our environments around us, our daily practices, our lives, what do we want to express? What is offending our moral consciousness and our sense of justice? What makes us angry or joyful? What are our ideas and our intentions to change the situation? Do we all feel like earthlings? Let us speak up. Let's speak out and engage in discussions. For this 7th session, what we wanted to do was highlight a certain number of territories: Angola, Bosnia, Congo, Andorra, Italy, Albania, Austria, Algeria, Mali, Belgium, and Cameroon. So this session will focus on 3 main points. First of all, we're going to see a certain number of films, videos. Sorry. Okay. Sorry, I'm supposed to be looking in this direction, says the speaker. Sorry, I thought I got it wrong. So we're going to look at the videos first of all, then we'll have a discussion with the participants, panelists that are here to represent some of the countries. We'll speak to Elisa, Gianfranco, maybe Gjerji Islami as well. And then after that, we'll have an open discussion between us with those of you who are on the Zoom meeting, and we'll also include our different panelists. Just to get the ball rolling, let's have a look at the films. We're really pleased that we're going to be able to see these films. Okay, off we go.
Only AI Godhead can make sense of all global data, climate, economy. It watches over equilibrium and flow of all transactions and extractions of each place. Like a shaman in ancient times. Sensors alarm the guardian system when a tree is cut, a lake is contaminated. It learns and improves the more you trust it. Algorithms were set to a good life for all organisms. We focus on the local, which is connected to all other territories by blockchain Godhead. We are but careful agents of our landscapes. The globality and complexity of everything is manifested exactly where you are. All the time. Save one being, and you save the whole species. Look at a drop of water and it is the ocean. If you trust the manifestation of all hyperobjects and issues at your place, a chain reaction is established, rippling through the totality, the delicate interconnections of the planet. If our world was truly materialistic, we would treat resources better. The word matter stems from word mother. We worship matter, mother, minerals and the fruits that feed on them. We ritualistically transform the metals of our landscapes. We carve a tree into the crib. The transformation of materials into different forms and into one another is worship. Place, we transform and restore its holy materials. It's our business because it is near. The nearer it is to you, the more it matters. Be it a hill, tree, river, your neighbor. The more you can do about it, care for it. Caring is something very active. Get in touch. Literally. We are only kept busy in virtual realms fighting each other over opinions. But information is an illusion. Look the other way. Matter is mother. Don't let shame get in your way. You are a function of the planet. Having less is not self-punishment but a sacred joy. Japanese design, Cistercian chambers and furniture by the Shakers shows there is sacred beauty in our denunciations. It makes you appreciate and increases awareness of necessity. Machines can now do all the work for us. Mostly better. Your job is now to carry plants around. Play, make imperfections, be imperfect, worship. There is love in the production of things and active care for beings. So make things with your hands, manifest. The act of making and speaking is not just producing them. It is a holistic process of cosmization, of reflecting and ordering things into existence. To integrate the unspeakable into our house, that is also our awareness. Consciousness itself. It matters in front of you.
Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are two little brothers, and they are the most beautiful children in the world. Fannie, whose full name is Federal National Mortgage Association, but everyone has always called her Fannie, is a beautiful blonde girl with long braids, a bit overweight, who always laughs and is always cheerful. Freddie, whose full name is Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation, but everyone has always called him Freddie, is the younger brother, a dry little boy with long hair and thick glasses. Fannie and Freddie are privileged. The father is the mayor of the village where they live, and their house is white, as a beautiful garden is large, elegant, and full of phantasmagorical toys such as trains and electric cars and wonderful dolls. Fannie and Freddie, however, know that not all children are so lucky. Turning hand in hand for the small town, in fact, they see many children who don't even have a toy, and maybe even live on the street. Fannie remembers well what her grandfather Delano told her. The real test for our progress is not so much if we can grow the abundance of those who already have too much, but rather if we can give enough to those who have too little. Fannie and Freddie break the piggy bank, go to the bank and buy the loans that poor children have made to buy toys. Then they go to the market and sell to passerbys shares of the poor children loan and guarantee them, and people queue up to buy loans. Worse than at the fish counter, someone also comes from far, far away, and so every child has his beautiful toy, and he pays a penny a month, and everyone trusts Fannie and Freddie, who set up their own business and no longer need their father's capital, and all live happily ever after. until something very bad happens. Poor kids don't even have the money to pay for toys anymore. Fannie and Freddie guarantee the investors, they reassure them, but the accounts are not good. Oh, no, no, not at all. The loans in their hands, though, are worth a lot of money. In theory, basically, all they have in their hands is a pile of paper and lots of used toys, and some even broken. Fannie and Freddie go to Dad. They explain the situation. Dad gets very angry and has to take on the debts. Being the mayor, takes them as head of the municipality and dismisses them to pay off all the creditors. Dad has to raise taxes oh so much because the debt is very high. Inconceivable! And the fellow citizens are not happy, no. And Dad is not happy with Fannie and Freddie. He puts them in the doghouse and passes them a miserable allowance, at least for a while.
Anthropocène. La Terre a déjà connu 5
Anthropocene. We have already seen 5 forms of extinction on our Earth. All kinds of extinctions that I could describe. And when the previous mass extinction took place, it was due to natural phenomena such as acid rain, for example, or volcanoes. And the second Anthropocene, however, is due to the destruction caused by man, pollution, chemical pollution. The third one began 11,000 years ago, and this was the period where humankind began farming. After the farming revolution, you had men and women who started to settle in different places, and the predator-based economy gradually evolved and moved towards capitalism. Capitalism is bigger than people. It's a system, and this system has gradually led to the Industrial Revolution, and these economic models have led to Western Europe, and this Industrial Revolution led to locomotives, led to modernization, modern life as we know it as humans. Man has evolved, but man is only a tiny species among millions of species. Man is like apes. Man has been able to better itself, but man basically is an animal. Its initial configuration is that it is an animal. Okay, so man has been able to travel through the ages for over 300 years, but even 70,000 years ago, cognitive changes took place and man be able to have a better, fuller conception of his role in the environment. The Industrial Revolution suddenly pushes man into a time frame where he's responsible for his own evolution, but it does have a certain number of disadvantages, and we're seeing the disadvantages. We're seeing how responsible man is for the phenomenal changes that we're seeing in contemporary society. Climate change without man's intervention would have enabled nature to gradually adapt and ecologically speaking to the natural environmental evolutions. Industrial development, this is one of the causes. All of the industrial and economic, social and political developments have totally deregulated the natural cycle that nature would have, and centuries have produced the initial notions of regressing, moving backwards in terms of biodiversity on the Earth. And so today we see that one of the major causes of imbalance comes from all of the human activity that has gradually led to this notion of Anthropocene in 1995. So there you have it for these first videos. Moussa, I'm afraid we had to cut off part of your video, but we will go back to it, and maybe you can explain your point of view in more detail in a few minutes' time. So we have a certain number of panelists here with us this evening. Elisa, Consolandi from Italy, Gianfranco, Tizzoni from Italy as well. So Moussa Sikoto, you're with us. You're from Algeria. Sorry, you're living in Algeria and you live in Mali. We wanted to start out with you, our Italian colleagues. Are you there?
Monsieur Slimani?
Mr. Slimani, we want to start out with you. Are you there?
Je sais que vous êtes pas loin.
I know that you're not very far away.
Vous êtes donc urbaniste?
You're an urban development planner. You live in Albania, in Tirana. And we're delighted to have this opportunity to talk with you this evening within the context of the World Anthropocene Manifesto. So are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, a few connection problems.
Non, aucun souci.
Hello.
No problem. Okay, so we wanted to enter into a discussion with you, Mr. Slimani. You're the introduction. As I said, you're in Albania. You also live, of course, like all of us, you're experiencing this Anthropocenic issue. Could you please go into detail on your idea?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to be present here and to express some concerns about whatever is happening to our environment and to our future on my thoughts. I have to notice that I'm an architect and an urban planner, so I'm much related to the territory, but also to the modification we make to the territory, to the alteration we make to that. And so what I'm concerned more about is the fact that we are misusing this wonderful resource, our nature. In the post-socialist developments in Albania, we came out of a centralized state into a transition to a democratic system, and this is a very particular case because we started to discover the liberty of changing and developing the territory. So we experienced a phenomenon of sprawl into the agricultural lands. We experienced the liberty of building and of illegal constructions. We're starting not considering the earth as a resource of goods and benefits for our future, but something to build over that. So it damaged in a great in a great degree the environment, the territory, and also it promoted a model that now is very hard to undo. I'm upset about the way us architects and planners are insensible to these issues. I'm upset to the degree of enthusiasm we have about our buildings. I'm upset about not recognizing the great potentials we have to live in harmony with nature. Yeah, of course, I love designing. I like that, but it's something that should be done consciously. So there is 100 years that more or less that we are rapidly transforming our cities, our environment in a car-centric city, in a car-centric model, which in my opinion is a very immature reaction and enthusiasm on technology. We are now rethinking about bringing back our cities to pedestrian modes. We are thinking bringing back our cities to a more livable areas with carless centers. And this happens all in 100 years when the cities has been transformed and faced a very radical development and alteration of the urban form. And what I do not agree with is that we promoted cars as an alternative to horses, just not thinking about how the transport should be, but just trying to think about how the medium should improve. And we transformed our cities because we choose to use cars and we didn't choose to think about how we should move in these more complex urban settlements. And I'm against the enthusiasm, the exaggerated enthusiasm to technology, because it creates unexpected results, and that's what the Industrial Revolution offered to us. A way of building, and I'm still speaking as an architect, with no concerns to energy, with no concerns to resources, which had to be focused in the crisis of the 70s and has to be reconsidered nowadays, and opening a lot of debates after a lot of non-efficient way of developing has been conducted with much damage on the environment.
Merci, Monsieur Slimani. Je me permets juste de vous couper. On revient.
Thank you very much. I'm going to cut you off. I'm sorry about that, but we'll come back to you in a few minutes' time when we talk about urban themes and how we organize our cities, the different forms that cities can take in the Anthropocene era. Now I'm going to go to Gianfranco. Now, Gianfranco, you produced one of the films that we just saw. You produced a film that really places us with our foot against the wall. So basically, the toys, the children, the fact that the children won't have any toys anymore. So why did you produce this video? What was the message that you wanted to convey in this video? Gianfranco.
Oui. Okay. I'm sorry, I don't speak French, but I understood a little of what you said. And I can say about this video, Fannie and Freddie, that is a little part of a big Italian project that was and is TINA, Storia della Grande Estinzione, Stories of the Great Extinction. That's by a project by Matteo Meschiari and Antonio Vena, in which more than 150 people participated, including illustrators and authors, and which resulted in a book published in Italy by Aguaplano, this one. It's a thick book, too. It contains about 100 very short scenarios and stories that portray moments and situations of crisis and extinction. Mass extinction, local extinctions, micro extinctions, already happened, present, future, and narrative links between them. All the copyright from the authors go to Extinction Rebellion. And the motto is fiction is action. Fannie and Freddie, the video you just watched, is a fairy tale. And it talks about a past crisis situation in 2008. There are two beautiful and kind-hearted children that, as I wrote elsewhere, in the end, we'll realize the unsustainability of capitalism due to the split between production and value, and between credit and actual production of wealth. Reading the book, one can easily realize how many scenarios of crisis and extinction originated from a sudden change in economic conditions. Since systems go under stress, and the management of the crisis becomes impossible. This happened in many different systems, like justice, like health, like the bank system, why not? In my usual field of work, justice, for example, the recent facts of Capitol Hill are interesting in terms of studying deviance. The judiciary system accepts, manages, and processes a certain percentage of deviation, as the health system is able to accept and process only a certain percentage of patients. If the percentage increases, the system collapses. Trials can be held because of the great number of offenders. Patients can't be cured because of their number, too. The banking system, too, as in Fannie and Freddie, manages, processes, etc., a certain amount of insolvency. Beyond that quantity, the system collapses. Better, it no longer exists anymore in reality, it only exists in representation. In the financial system, we're seeing now something like that happening with the famous GameStop and Reddit affair. There's always been, and there still is, trust that big organizations can be able to manage and overcome crises. That is simply not true. Contrary to what was said during the crisis of 2008, nothing is too big to fall. No invisible hand will come to the rescue. And as Mr. Tyrrell said to Roy Batty in Blade Runner, rats leave the sinking ship. Then the ship sinks. In fact, it's true the opposite. The bigger they are, the more they make noise, damage, and victims when they fall. And this, for us, is Anthropocene. Thank you. That's
Merci, Gianfranco.
Thank you very much, Gianfranco. So let's continue our little round table here, because I think it's useful for everybody to be able to introduce themselves and to understand the dynamics at play here, so that we can continue talking about these issues in this session. I'd like to hand over to Elisa now. You too, Elisa Consolandi, you're Italian, and you've produced one of the films that we saw previously, the film where you saw all of these pictures going by, all of these landscape, travelling images, and good evening, Elisa.
Good evening.
Je vous laisse peut-être nous commenter votre vidéo, nous expliquer.
Maybe you could comment on your film and explain the messages that you wanted to convey in your film.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the opportunity to having me here during this great manifest of the Anthropocene. In my film, I underlined the idea of taking consciousness against the Anthropocene. We are in this era, and many people still don't know we are living what we are living. Or other people know, but they do nothing, and other people know, but they don't accept it at all. And with my film, I would like to underline that we can change the future. We cannot go back, but we have the chance to change our relationship with the nature and with everything which is natural, which is in a more sustainable way, in a way. So we have to change our way of inhabit the world in a more sustainable way in order to come back to the nature, as I underlined. And I think that becoming conscious is something that this pandemic has underlined a lot. And I think that this environmental and epidemic crisis has helped us in a way to underline the problem of the Anthropocene and to underline the vulnerability of the people of the world. We are not almighty, we are not omnipotent, and I think that coronavirus has underlined it a lot. Especially in Italy, maybe because I live in the Po Valley, which is one of the most polluted regions in Europe. And I think that pollution plays a greater role also in this context. So the idea of being conscious is something that I strongly want to underline, and to start to being conscious is a step before, because will help us in a way to change our idea of the future.
Merci Elisa. Et puis alors pas pour finir.
Thank you very much. No, to finish, well, not really to finish, in fact, because we've got more guests. So you're in Algiers, you're Malian, but you're president of an African association, and you are in Algiers right now. So we're very happy to have you with us today. So we've seen part of your film, but in fact there was part of your message missing. So we're very happy that you can be with us this evening to continue to develop this message. Can you hear us?
Alors, nous, on vous entend pas.
So we can't hear you, unfortunately, Mr. SISSOKO.
On va essayer de faire quelque chose.
We're going to try and resolve the sound issue.
Oui, c'est tout bon. Super, merci.
Oh, great, we can hear you now. We can see you as well. Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So I'd like to thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation to join you tonight. And thank you very much for this opportunity to take part in this World Anthropocene Manifesto. As I said, I'm delighted to be able to contribute to this through what I do with the African youth. And also I'm delighted to be able to show what we call the reaction of the African youth to this crisis, this Anthropocene crisis. And you know that this crisis is jeopardizing our very existence. So it's really very important for us to showcase what we're doing and to talk about biodiversity and the environment. So to be able to achieve all of our objectives, we have to act and we have to adopt environmentally friendly principles, as I said in our video. So basically, we've learned over the years that, in fact, what we're doing is we're just suffering from this crisis. It's been imposed upon us, and it's really unimaginable, and it's something that is very difficult for us to deal with because, in fact, it's worsened our living conditions. But nonetheless, in Africa, we're very lucky because, in fact, we have taken a positive take on climate change, and we work in symbiosis with our brothers in Europe because climate change is really helping us give new impetus to all of these new solutions, for example, green capitalism. And we, as the young Africans, we know this that our future and our fate depends on this because we're threatened by political inaction and political inertia. You know that we're working on this big green wall project, and basically it's a project to restore our ecological environment and consciousness, and we want to fight against desertification and also to fight against poverty and unemployment. This is something we started doing 15 years ago. So this Pan-African initiative, which unites all of the countries in the Sahel Strip, and you know, we're not just paying lip service to all of these trendy slogans. It's really about action. And in September 2020, we already stated that there was a lack of political awareness, there was a lack of political cooperation, and so many states have failed to act, and we know we have objectives for 2030. So we've decided to take this into our hands and to think about different initiatives, for example, landscape design, and with new projects which enable us to create jobs and also to help people adapt to climate change, but also to improve food security and also to help our region be included in the reconfiguration of digital capitalism and to play a very proactive role in all of these changes so that we can develop a long-term future for Africa. So our young people want to raise the awareness of the African population and more particularly African youth and also the African farming world, because we know that we have to adapt to this climate crisis. We know that we have an extraordinary tool, as I was saying earlier in my film, at our disposal, which is digital and the digital transformation. So the digital revolution is giving us the opportunity to solve this crisis with a new international economic and political order. And it's a new deal for us. And one of the specific features of this new international order has to be the result of all of these proposals which are induced by or brought about by these new young generations who are going to build a more peaceful world and a more environmentally friendly world, but also a more progressive world. The aim is to have an aware humankind, if you like, and we have to rethink the old international order. We have to rethink that completely, and we have to improve while decreasing the dark forces at play and that impact the environment negatively. So through our thinking with young people, I think we are really the best placed to be able to find new solutions for humankind. And we've already done a lot of work on all of these solutions, and I think we have to create a body within the African Union which will coordinate all of these think tank bodies, and we'll be able to model different solutions and come up with different ideas to help all of our countries. And to this end, I think there are certain points that will be able to help young Africans or even young Europeans in this approach. First of all, enroll in African universities in masters or whatever courses to enroll and to create courses on the consequences of climate change, and also have green taxation measures to help people include the environment in their professional environment. And also we have to think about different social categories and how to promote healthy living conditions, and also to think about the new new space and time continuum in the new green order. And also we have to think about the harmful consequences of the old world and the old business models. And we have to come up with solutions which correspond to the evolution of humanity. So this is basically what explains what I understand by this notion of Anthropocene. So basically it's a global space which creates a new humankind with new objectives and a new civilization project which is in line with the public interest of all countries. And also we have to teach this in schools and universities. We have to teach the most basic rules on ecological hygiene, which have to be at the basis of our future and the future of humankind. We have to include the question of climate in civil education in Africa. We have to create clusters for jobs and farming practices, for example, smart farming practices, and we have to include all of the recommendations for healthy environments. Also in industry, we really have to assess industrial practices and evolve more towards a green industry while adopting solutions which are environmentally friendly solutions. Also in service industries, we have to create jobs where we include the environmental component, which has to be at the heart of all of these service industry jobs. And also we have to work with young Africans, protect and consolidate their relationship with society and with the environment. And also we have to respect the laws of nature. We have to create these green villages and green cities where people who live there will be able to spearhead this environmental revolution. SISSOKO. Allow me to cut you off there. I'm sorry to interrupt you because you have a lot of ideas. I know a lot of very interesting ideas that we'll come back to later on. And obviously this enables us to create links with everybody who's spoken. Also we could think about creating a network. You've talked about the manifesto. This is why we're all here today actually to talk about this. Now I'd like to welcome Nabila. You are in Gaza. So let's just reverse slightly in our trip around the world. But we're delighted to have you with us at last because you made a film as well, and we didn't see it in this session, but we saw it in a previous session today. So maybe you could just give us a quick introduction to that film and tell us what it's all about. Thank you very much. Yes, good evening, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to take the floor here this evening in this event. My name is Nabila Kabili from Gaza, and unfortunately I wasn't on time, and this was probably because of the power cuts that I was actually talking about in my film. We only get 8 hours electricity a day, and this has lasted for more than 14 years now. So first and foremost, thank you very much for thinking about Palestine and inviting us to be part of this event. So I just wanted to say, what a shame. The connections come back. Yes, we can hear you. So, if I talked about Gaza, the whole of Palestine is not synonymous with the Gaza Strip, but it's a concentration of all the problems that we have. In fact, we have the West Bank as well. Now, in my film, I mentioned the fact that I'm the mother of a 14-year-old girl, and this little girl of mine has never had one single day with 24 hours electricity because Israeli occupation, unfortunately, has prevented us from having 24-hour power. We have problems with electricity. We have problems with water and water pollution. We don't have drinking water. Unfortunately, we can't drink tap water either because they release a lot of chemicals into the water, so we can't use the tap water. So we have big problems with access to water. And talking about Gaza Strip, the farming sector has really undergone some severe crisis, particularly with the use of pesticides and the fact that they've torn down all of our trees and they've really cleared all of our fields and crops, and that's basically what I was showing in my film. Thank you very much, Nabila. So we're very sensitive to the problems that you've raised and the issues that you've just talked about, because this is directly linked with all of the problems that our panelists have been talking about this evening. The question of inequalities brought about by Anthropocene, which in fact not really brought about by Anthropocene, but in fact exacerbated by Anthropocene. So how can we face all of these problems together? So we were talking about a new international deal, a new international Anthropocene. Maybe this manifesto will set the ball rolling towards that new deal. But I think this is something that I'd like to hear you all talk about how we're going to face inequalities, how we're going to resolve these inequalities, how can we network, how can we promote community living, how can we live together better. So this is what we want to do this evening. We wanted really to set the ball rolling, and there are different measures that you all mentioned in what you said. So I'd like to ask any of the participants if they want to talk more about these inequalities.
Peut-être Moussa, Alger.
Maybe Moussa in Algiers. Would you maybe to refer back to the discussion that we started? Maybe you'd like to continue?
Hello, vous m'entendez?
Oui, on vous
Are you able to hear me? Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Well, here, for example, as you were saying earlier concerning inequalities, I think we can simply say that we're living proof of this as Africans, and I'm living proof of this as an individual. I was born in a tiny village in Mali, for example. It's around 5 kilometers away from Bamako, and where I was born, there's no electricity, no drinking water available. Even when we were tiny, we used to walk to collect water from a river, and the color of the water was yellow. Sometimes it took 2 or 3 days. We had to leave the water to rest in order for us to be able to collect it 3 days later and presume it would be cleaner. I grew up in that village, and then my studies took me to Algeria, etc. But basically, what I would like to say is that our vision of this kind of inequality, it's a vision that we've had since we were children. We see that there's capitalism that is then added on, and particularly the kind of capitalism that we see at the current time. What we want to avoid above all is a situation whereby young Africans, the new generation of Africans, avoid thinking about global warming. We don't want them to concentrate on capitalism. We don't want them to see global warming simply as something that is negative. We want them to create opportunities for themselves within the context. And that's why I always say it's important to listen to young people, because young people always think about the time period they're living in, and they're going to be the adults of the future. We need to take their opinions on board. This is why I'd very much like to talk to you about a sizable project that we have the opportunity currently to put together, and we're going to bring it to fruition. It involves 8 countries from sub-Saharan Africa and a couple of countries from North Africa, and the basic aim is to enable young people to use a certain number of tools, to use the digital revolution, and to make it part and parcel of their way of fighting against climate change, so that we can create jobs for young people, and so that at the same time we can enable this young generation to not be victims, to clearly not be victims of capitalism, the rampant type of capitalism that we're currently seeing. And hence, young people will be able to adapt very quickly, very efficiently. All we need to do is organize days, such as a day like today, whereby young people get the opportunity to discuss the question and to put forth their point of view with other people from all around the world. That way we can pool everybody's ideas and at the same time bring forth the ideas and the projects that will enable us to contribute positively to what we call this combat. Now, I'd like to make the most of this opportunity to react to what you've said, and I'd like to put a question that you might not be able to answer, but I'd like us to use our experience this evening to provide a certain number of answers. How do we all come together in a network? Well, even if we've got a joint subject that we want to focus on, and we can do so because we all come from different environments and contexts, we've been able to see so that you've talked about the alliance between the sub-Saharan countries and notably Algeria, where you are currently. We see now that the issues, the problems in Gaza are very different, for example, from the ones that we experience. I don't know, and I don't really want to throw the ball into your court, but Elisa, you produced a video. You're Italian, you're also European, so the theme is all very evocative for you, but in a different way. And in your video, we found a certain number of aspects that focus on raising awareness. But how can we raise the awareness when it comes to Anthropocene. In Europe, in Gaza, in sub-Saharan Africa, you don't necessarily have the same challenges. So are we going to manage to pool our resources, our ideas on the subject? Over to you, Elisa.
Well, maybe starting to the young people, as Moussa said, because I think that maybe in primary schools, starting from children, trying to give them the opportunity to focus on resources, on the linkage of resources and inequalities can help us to make something to change and to maybe other people aware of what's happening around. So institution, governance, participation, round table about the topic from all ages, starting from the children to adults, maybe can help to raise awareness about this topic. And I think that this kind of event like a manifesto, a open call to the people, can help to raise awareness also from every part of the world. We are a proof of what can happen if we have a choir of voices that bring their point of view, their own point of view about the topic. So I think that this experiment went well, and I also think that bringing many people from many countries in this round table can make other people aware of what's happening in the other part of the world. I listened to the panel this morning, and I started to make a sort of reasonment about the Anthropocene, and I think that this can be made many times and for long times in order to make people more conscious, starting from children and then to the other ages. So this can help a lot, I think.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. It's true, there are many elements that are being discussed in the context of the discussion this evening, gradually creating links, bringing things together. Mr. Slimani, let me pass the floor back to you. You opened up this roundtable focusing on different elements related to architecture, urban development and buildings. I personally am very interested in all of this, but I'd like to say, nevertheless, can you create more links? Do you think that towns and cities are a context that we all share, even if we live in towns and cities in different ways, in different contexts?
On vous entend.
We can hear you.
I missed the last part of the question because the translation is too fast and I couldn't.
Ah pardon. Je reprends du coup.
Okay, let me speak again. I was asking you. You gave us the introduction on urban themes. You talked about urban development thanks to your profession, and despite the different context, despite the inequalities between the north and the south, we realise that one thing you do share is your towns and cities. So maybe this is what can bring us together, because we share this context of the towns and cities, even if we live very differently in our towns and cities. Do you believe this? Do you agree with this point of view? And is it something that is meaningful and important to you as well?
Okay. I mean, the city is the place where we exchange all the everyday activity, we exchange our thoughts, and is the place where we interact with each other. But it's also the place that generates most of the pollution, most of the environmental impact, and most of the transformations that then sprawl all over the territory. So talking about the cities, the way we transform cities and the way we build cities, we have to think and to discuss about how this should happen, because cities do not offer equal opportunities for everybody. Cities are now driven by the market force of economy, which is building skyscrapers and promoting disequalities and this polarization of the society. So, I mean, we as architects and planners, we have a major role in thinking the future as something related to the common good more than to the glorifying the monumentality of a city. And yeah, I agree with previous speakers that education is a crucial point in this. And also, I'm coming from a background of architectural education, and education is something that we can use as a powerful tool to promote a mentality that should shift towards a better future, a more sustainable future. And yeah, okay, we're talking then about equalities and talking about possibilities for people to live together. I mean, we don't have to go far. I mean, we have these inequalities also in Europe, in the continental Europe. We have these inequalities also in the Western Balkans that are just bordering the official European border. So I think this is something that we have to consider, and not to see that related just to communities, but is spread all over, is sitting in the middle of Europe. So we just have to think about a better future. And I think the key tool for doing that is education.
Merci, Mr. Slimani. La question.
Thank you, Mr. Slimani. Yes, we've talked about education, and obviously this is something that is essential. Gianfranco, we also started with you. We saw one of your films. I think that when one produces a film, naturally it's because one has a message to convey, maybe for educational purposes. I'll let you tell us. You also took part in what's called La Grande Extinction, if I translate loosely, the Great Extinction. Is that true?
Sorry, I have a great lag in translation, so I'm waiting for it.
Aucun souci. Je disais que vous aviez.
I was saying that you took part in a work called The Great Extinction, if I translate loosely. This is one of the themes that we haven't necessarily focused on for this session, but we do have a few minutes left, 3 minutes precisely. Would you like to say a few words? Would you like to give us an additional point of view?
Sorry, I have 20 seconds of delay because I hear the translation here. Can you repeat the question?
Bien sûr.
Yes, of course, with pleasure. I was referring to the book you took part in, The Great Extinction, in order to know whether you could talk to us about this to conclude this roundtable. We have only 3 minutes left, unfortunately. So it's work you contributed to, The Great Extinction.
These short stories and scenarios, all I can say is that they come from billions years ago and go into the far future. So there's a lot of events involved, and the crisis situation that are all in their way, extinction, because an ethnic group or a single state or a single person or a single category is no more, because the conditions that permitted him to live are not there anymore. And that could be our actual situation. Thank you.
Merci, Gianfranco.
Thank you very much, Gianfranco. So we have 2 minutes
session.
left within which to close this session, and it's taken off in all different directions to many different territories. Some of you, as you know, are in Italy, in Albania, in Algiers. We've also talked about this link, the natural link between enhancing awareness and how can we make sure that all together we find common ground, towns, cities, the question of education. And we've also focused on the tools, the systems that can be used. Unfortunately, we haven't got time to develop this, but Elisa, maybe to round things off and to conclude, I know that you, Elisa, you are a researcher. You also work on aspects related to big data. Is this a tool, do you believe, that could enable us to better spatialize our challenges and create links between different territories?
Well, I think that the main tool will be maps. As I work with maps, mapping big data maybe will help to focus on the problem of the people. And working with big data is very difficult. I don't work with big data directly, but I work with engineer because I'm a geographer. So I do the mapping, and I think that maps, if really good done, can help in order to solve many problems. And participatory mapping, also using big data, can help to focus on the problem we talk about, which can be the education, the inequalities, resources, and so on. So I think that using big data and using data coming from the world, maybe we can give a great vision of the Anthropocene in such a way we can deal with them. Of course, maps can lie, so we have to produce maps which are not lying, which are telling the truth. And the truth is only given if people are giving that. So if people can participate and give their point of view about the problem they have.
Merci Elisa. Et puis, voilà, c'est la fin de cette session.
Okay, so it's the end of this session. I'm terribly sorry. We do have to make way for other territories that are going to arrive on the virtual stage very soon. I just wanted to say thank you to all of you, to those of you who followed us, Nabila in Gaza, Gianfranco, Gjerji, and Elisa yourself. Thank you once again, everybody. Thank you also to all of the team. And let's move on now to the next territory.